Hello, welcome back, another live stream, and today I'm going to talk about monsters. I've really kind of wanted to talk about this monster and a variety of other monsters, and so this is my opportunity to sort of delve into a little bit of Dungeon Master monster lore, and then I've got some combat stuff for you, and I've got a bit of how to defeat this monster, and then also a bit of sort of story stuff as well, because I like the idea of like how do you include it into a story. So grab some food, some drink, make sure you are comfortable, get ready. I suspect that you will enjoy this monster and find it quite useful in your games. I'm going to also run a poll at the same time, and feel free to respond to it. You can't change your decision in the poll, so maybe select what you want to select later on if you're not completely sure what you should vote for in the poll. Okay, and I will of course do a Q&A or questions and answers at the end of the live stream for those of you who want to stick around and do that. Okay, not a problem. So get comfortable and let's talk about monsters. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons because I usually do talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and today's topic is the horrific Broken One in Dungeons and Dragons monster lore. This thing is hideous. It looks like a Frankenstein creature cobbled together and stitched together from various different animals, and the number of animals is actually, I mean, there's no limit to the number of things you could attach to this thing if you really wanted to. So it really is like the mad scientist monster. This monster goes right back to advanced Dungeons and Dragons, so it's been around a long time. For those of you who are unaware, it is a very old monster and certainly very much a monster suitable for the Ravenloft setting or the domains of dread. For those of you who are into that sort of thing, absolutely this is the right monster for you. So let's work our way through here. So first off, the Broken One is basically an animal person, or I mean it has been listed as being the Broken One or the Animal Man. A lot of monsters that were sort of humanoid were often had man or men attached to it in some way. I've replaced the word animal, not so much animal, but the name man or men with people. They're tragic survivors of scientific and magical experiments gone wrong. A Broken One could also be the product of a powerful curse, or on rare occasions, the punishment by the dark powers from the domains of dread. It is also rumoured that some Broken Ones are the result of failed attempts at resurrection, reincarnation, or the polymorph spells. Now, while Broken Ones look more or less human, they are physically warped by animal bodies and their parts. They're twisted together by the accidents that spawned them. For example, a Broken One can be infused with rat DNA or rat parts. It might have horrific feral sort of whiskers. It could have other aspects to it that are feral as well. Wiry whiskers, curled, long clawed fingers, maybe even a long whip-like tail. Broken Ones remember whatever language they knew as a human being. 10% of Broken Ones will also be able to communicate with the animal kin that they have infused into them. It is not uncommon for the speech of a Broken One to be heavily accented or slurred by the deformities of its body. So it's a pretty horrific thing. Now, in combat, the Broken One tends to be a reclusive creature, which means that combat with this is very rare. The Broken One, they're strong opponents with really dense muscle fibers and improved stamina, a side effect of being infused with the animal tissue. All Broken Ones heal at a greatly accelerated rate and regenerate in seconds. A Broken One will often wield forged or simple weapons in combat, not just use unarmed strikes or natural weapons. Many Broken Ones have developed sharp teeth, long claws, and muscular bodies, which makes them deadly in unarmed combat. Broken Ones have other abilities as well that are derived from their animal half, such as night vision or keen hearing or even improved smell, and there's no limit to what you can actually do with this. As a general rule, each Broken One will have a single ability related to the animal that it is infused with in terms of the creature and its body. So they don't necessarily have a lot of different abilities. We're going to get onto that one. In terms of the habitat and society of this creature, Broken Ones band together in groups of between 10 and 60 individuals. Since Broken Ones seldom find acceptance in a human society, which is no surprise, they seek out their own, and they will dwell in secluded areas, dense woods, rocky wastelands, far from the homes of humans and other creatures. From time to time, Broken Ones will attack a human village or settlement or even a caravan, either for supplies or in self-defense, or even possibly simply out of vengeance for real or imagined wrongs against them. If possible, Broken Ones will try to seek out their evil creator and destroy them for the transformations that have been inflicted upon them. Now, when a society of Broken Ones is actually found, and sometimes they do develop, it will almost always be tribal in nature and have some sort of leader or chieftain at the top. There will be between 10 and 60 typical Broken Ones with a greater Broken One, which is a much more powerful version of the Broken One. The greater Broken Ones, which I will describe, will act as their leaders and often have absolute power over their subjects and the other Broken Ones in their clan. Now, in terms of ecology, Broken Ones are unnatural combinations of humans and animals. So this is definitely an experiment process. This is not a natural process in any sense of the word. This can be a product of science. It could be a product of magic. It can be a product of both. It's really up to you, or all sorts of other things. So you can do a lot with this. The Broken One's individual diet and feeding habits are largely dictated by the animal natures. So whatever the being is that has been infused into the human side of this creature, so if it's a carnivorous animal, then it's going to be carnivorous. If it's a herbivore, then it's going to be eating vegetation. It could be an omnivore. So a Broken One who has leonine characteristics or lion characteristics would be carnivorous, while one infused with, say, the essence of a horse would be a vegetarian. There are no known examples of Broken Ones who have been formed with the essence of a intelligent non-human creature, which basically means that you're not going to find a combo human dolphin anywhere. Now, I'm not going to say you can't do that, but usually dolphin-human Broken Ones aren't on the menu. Broken Ones manufacture and craft items, tools, and weapons they need to survive, and occasionally Broken Ones might be captured by, say, a dark wizard or a necromancer or a sage who wishes to study their physiology and their makeup in some way. In terms of the Broken Ones, which are the most powerful out of all of the Broken Ones, the greater Broken Ones. So from time to time, some animalistic humanoids emerge who are physically superior, the greater Broken Ones. While Broken Ones or greater Broken Ones are still horrible to look upon and can't dwell with other humans, they are deadly figures with keen minds and powerful bodies that can make impressive war chiefs. Their twisted and broken spirits often lead the greater Broken Ones to acts of brutal violence against non-humans. The greater Broken Ones regenerate at twice the rate of their normal peers, and a greater Broken One is stronger than their standard version and more deadly in combat or even with a weapon. So unarmed strikes and weapons, they are much more skilled and much stronger and much more dangerous. Greater Broken Ones often have numerous special abilities, anywhere from 1 through to 4 different abilities, and many may even have better abilities than the animal that is infused or spliced into it. For example, a broken one, or greater broken one, should I say, could be created from, say, scorpion stock. It might have a chitinous shell, a very hard shell on it, giving it tougher armor, even tougher than a normal scorpion. And it might have a poisonous stinger, delivering poison which is vastly more deadly than the scorpion it was originally bonded with. Now, how do you defeat something like a broken one? Well, you don't get into a fight with it. Frankly, don't get into a fight. It's better to flee, because every broken one is different. So they require very specific tactics, and the tactics you would use against them would be different every single time, and you don't really know what you're facing. It's actually a brilliant monster to have to include in your adventure, because there's no way for the characters to really know what they're dealing with, because every single one of them is likely to be different. How to incorporate a broken one into your adventure. These tragic creatures make fantastic additions to the Curse of Strahd, the Domains of Dread, even the Ravenloft setting. For those of you who are just thinking in terms of Ravenloft, essentially what I've just talked about is Ravenloft, or as collateral damage from a mad scientist or mad mage of some kind. The Broken One appears in the Monstrous Manual for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition, and it is by far one of the craziest monsters out there, and I encourage you to use it in your games, because I am sure you will find many uses for it and find it highly entertaining, and I'm sure your players will remember this thing. Now, I'm hoping this video was useful to you, and if it was, fantastic. Now, if you like this sort of content, I have more content like this, and I also have content for players and dungeon masters covering every aspect of Dungeons & Dragons and Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and in general role-play games as well. If you want to support the channel, you can through Patreon, the Amazon affiliate links down in the description, the merchandise shelf underneath all of my videos, or just watch my videos. Do the usual YouTube things like share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. I'm not gone. All right, so if you have some questions and some ideas, let's talk about this monster, or whatever you want to talk about. I mean, frankly, it doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned. I am sure that a few of you are thinking, this is like ramped up mongrel folk. Kevin, you are right. Mongrel folk taken to the extreme. So while I just wait for, now it looks we're a little bit light on people today, but then I knew that was going to be the case when I started talking about monsters. So I'm just looking at the poll. Would you use the Broken One in your Dungeons & Dragons game? And we have 50% have said yes, and 50% have undecided. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this creature. I do encourage you to chat with me. Look, I am happy to talk about the Lost Mine of Phandelver. I am happy to talk about the Curse of Strahd. Certainly I am willing to talk about Dragon of Ice by a Peak. I'm happy to talk about other things, general Dungeon Master stuff, but I will also talk about this monster unless people direct me in the direction of, yes, we want to talk more about this. For me, for those of you who don't know, there used to be a thing called Mongrel Men, and of course that's Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So the wording men had been removed and replaced by mongrel folk for the Curse of Strahd, the modern rendition of Ravenloft, the original adventure, and then expanded. They are found in the Abbey. It's a tragic and horrible story that takes place there, and this is like the perfect location to include the Broken One, where you don't have to have more than one, you could have just one. There's already a lot of mad scientist nonsense going on over there already, and the abbot is certainly largely responsible, well, almost or completely responsible for all of that. So if you're wanting to have something that sort of takes everything to the next level, then I think you'll find that the Broken One will do that for you. Now, I still want to talk a little bit more about the Broken One in this monster, but I do want to mention that there is going to be a Dungeon Master Roundtable today. It is going to be live. We don't often do them live, but today we are going to be doing it live. It is going to be in about approximately 2 hours. So that means it will be taking place, Pacific Standard Time is 5 p.m. If you're in Mountain Daylight Time, it would be 6 p.m. If you're in Central Standard Time, that's 7 p.m. And Eastern Standard Time, if you're in Miami or Florida, then it would be 8 p.m. And for New Zealand, it is 12 p.m. or noon for me. And the individuals that are going to be present to talk about, we are going to talk about monsters, but other sort of Dungeon Master stuff. We have Bearbard Tales, for those of you who know Bearbard Tales. I will be there, of course. AJ Pickett, Monster Lore Extraordinaire, he will be there. We're going to have No Fun Allowed, for those of you who are aware of No Fun Allowed. And then we've got Dicely D&D, Tenny, a very nice guy. He'll be there. He's bringing along one of his players from his game, Anthony Saul, and we will have Flutes Loot. Jordan will also be there. There will be a panel of 7 of us. It will be one of the larger panels we've ever done, and I'm hoping this might be a feature for the future. For those of you who enjoy it, where will it be taking place? I will put up a link to it so you can find it. It will be on Twitch TV. I understand that Denny or Dicely D&D uses Twitch TV, and it will be there at the times that I've just mentioned. The other thing is that the Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master tutorials and guide is now available to join on Lighthall for those of you who are interested. We already had our first session, and tomorrow, is it tomorrow? No, in 2 days' time we will be going over Cragmore Hideout. And then the following week we'll move on to Phandalin and so forth. So if you're interested in that, go join up. Okay, so it's a bit quiet in the chat today, so I'm going to talk just a little bit about this creature. One of the things for those of you who are wanting to use this monster, it's the sort of monster that it's very difficult to build a stat block in 5e for, because there's so much variation. And as a result of that, you will find down in the description the original stat block and lore for this monster in one of the links below in the description. You'll also find a little bit of lore in just I believe it is the Forgotten Realms Wiki, for those of you who are interested and just want to see what is there. And then I've included a first draft or a couple of ideas that people have presented for this monster, where you can sort of take, it's set up like a table, and so you could take bits and pieces if you want to use them to create your stat block for this monster. So it has the basic stat block that you need for 5e, and then it has a whole lot of things that you can add on to it to make it a bit more interesting, to make it much more fitting for your game if you are interested. So I have not actually built a stat block for this. This is what HowtoDandD does. And I have selected something that I thought the community had done a reasonable job in the first place. Okay. So when I was thinking in terms of what sort of monster to include in my discussion, one of the things is, for those of you who don't know, I have been doing a lot of Curse of Strahd, or have in the past done a lot of Curse of Strahd Dungeon Master guides and videos. Now, I could just keep doing that sort of thing, but the reality is that I think that people want to include their own homebrew and variation on what's going on. And so for me, I have been selecting quite deliberately monsters and creatures that I think you can include into a campaign in a Ravenloft setting, such as the Broken One. I've talked about the living wall. I've talked about the vampiric mist. The vampiric mist you will have seen. There is actually a stat block for 5e. I mean, I wouldn't say it's that great, but it's still a very interesting monster, and it fits the setting very well. I will in the future, I think in about 2 weeks, I'm going to talk about the crypt thing, which for those of you who remember, there was an old TV series that had the Crypt Keeper. So the crypt thing is kind of like that. It certainly looks a lot like that. And that's another creature that I will talk about that you can include into your Ravenloft adventure, your Curse of Strahd adventure, your Domains of Dread that you might be running, or anything like that. It's a very dark theme. Now, we have had Spelljammer drop. And as a result of that, I am looking at some of the... Now, I am deliberately picking monsters that people have not talked about on YouTube before. So I've had this discussion with AJ Pickett and DungeonDad, and I've kind of sort of said, look, I'm going to not talk about monsters you guys have already talked about. We've already discussed this. AJ Pickett's his opinion has basically said, Fred, if you start talking about monsters, it doesn't bother me if you talk about a monster I've already talked about. I don't care. It's a different perspective, and every perspective has value. And so he's been fine about it. DungeonDad has really, Josiah's been voicing the same sort of thing, which is why you'll find that I've dropped the Living Wall video as a live stream and then an edited video. And now if you go and check out DungeonDad, you will find he has his own video, very high quality, lots of editing that he's made on his channel. He just released a few hours ago, I believe. And then what will happen is when AJ is ready, AJ Pickett will probably drop the Living Wall video as well. He was going to do it not so long ago, but he didn't do so because Josiah had just recently put it together, and he thought, okay, I'm going to just wait a little bit longer before I drop mine. So you're going to see a lot of this happen. I can assure you that I guess my intention behind this is AJ's doing his thing. DungeonDad is trying to do stuff that AJ's not doing, and I'm trying to do stuff that those two aren't doing. So we're kind of hoping to sort of fill things out. Now, because Spelljammer has dropped, there are a number of monsters that I could discuss and talk about in the future that may be of interest to you, rather than focusing on monsters and creatures that are more suitable for a gothic horror or a Ravenloft or Domain of Dread adventure. Now, if that sounds like it's something you would like, that is great. So you let me know. Like, this is the time. If there's people in the chat right now who would prefer that I continue on my road and do gothic horror monsters, I will do gothic horror monsters. There's plenty of them. Otherwise, I will do the crypt thing in about 2 weeks, and then after that, I'm going to give you the bat crazy Spelljammer stuff if that's what you want. So you give me an idea, and that's what I can work on. What I did is I did something absolutely mental. And this does happen from time to time. Hi, I'm Morgan. How's it going? Different viewpoints. Yep. Always helpful. And this is, I guess, where we're at. You'll also notice on my channel, you're starting to see monsters, and on DungeonDad's channel, you'll see how to use whatever type of monster. And I've tried to encourage DungeonDad or Josiah to do some iconic monsters rather than the really strange and odd and rare ones that people aren't very familiar with. And I think it's doing quite well. On my channel, I don't normally talk about monsters, so it's a bit of a shock to people's system. I am aware that they're not going to do very well, and that's fine because I'm looking in terms of the long term. Hi Jasper Pearl, how's it going? So you will expect to see more story ideas around monsters, because I feel like Dungeons and Dragons, and particularly Dungeons and Dragons, is really the story of monsters and their interaction with the player's characters. And so that's what I want to sort of focus on. You will also see a lot of other stuff showing up on my channel. Things that you probably were not expecting, things that I honestly had given up on trying to do. Okay? So, Peter, what have your vote is, My vote is for gothic horror monsters, please. Thanks, Fred. So that's one vote. So I'm waiting for... So usually if I get 3 votes, then I know where I am at. Do you know what I mean? So there's plenty of time to actually voice your opinion. Voicing your opinion here makes a big difference. I do actually listen to what you say. What's that, Morgan? Some monsters often fall through the cracks because they are unknown and hard to fathom. Yes, that's right. So to just give you an idea of what I've been up to, there's been a lot of things I've been up to, but one of the things I've been up to is this book, okay? This is a very old book. This is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition. It is one of the better monster manuals, although there are some fairly good ones out there. I'm doing monster lore. Yes, I'm doing monster lore. I always wanted to do monster lore. I actually really have enjoyed it far more. So to give you an idea, I sat down with this book and I got onto Google and did my Google documents and I put together notes for every single monster in this book. Every single one. And so while I'm at work, I go through and I adjust things. I usually trim out the mechanical stuff because I don't really want to talk about the mechanics of a monster. I just want to talk about the story elements and the story concepts behind it and sort of pull out and tease out the information that might have been lost or is sitting between the lines, and then do a lot of research essentially on where I can get additional information. So every single monster is now a Google document waiting to be turned into a video or a live stream. And it's probably going to be a live stream. I don't know if it'll become an edited video, but every single one is now sitting like that, waiting for you. So if you were looking for a lot of the monsters that have been lost over time, I can assure you between AJ Pickett, Dungeon Dad, and myself, we are going to truck out a lot. I have just got Mr. Welsh on board, and he will be appearing as part of the Dungeon Master Roundtable for the month of May. For those of you who were hoping that he would join us, he has agreed, and he's lined up. I have confirmed him. Okay, so what have we got here? I'm going to put my eyes on because my eyes are a little lost here. Janchvik, how's it going? Morgan, I have the DVD box from Tales from the Crypt, so my opinion is a bit biased. No, well, you know, gothic horror is a thing I miss in some stories. So that's 2 people who want gothic horror. That's fine, and I can do that because, like I said, all the monsters are waiting to be delivered as videos. I just go through and clean them up during the week to give myself a better idea of, I want to communicate it in a way that's nice and simple and easy, and I also want to make it useful to you and try to dissect some of the mechanical aspects out of it. Okay. Hello, Nuka Wolf, how's it going? I'm not one for live stream, but I do put some all monster videos in playlists on my channel. I'm good either way, though I have found there aren't a lot of water monsters. Really? Mid-level water monsters. Interesting. I suppose that's very true. Yeah. To be fair, Nuka, the likelihood is if I can find the time, I will cut these down and they'll make them into edited videos. But I'm not going to promise that, because for those of you who are unaware, and I've been building like Dungeons and Dragons classes to run, not on YouTube, because YouTube is garbage for trying to do that. I've got somebody approached me, they are paying me to do it, and it's offered to you for free. So it's the best situation, and their platform works like a dream in comparison to YouTube. And so, yeah, so a lot of my time is going into that rather than chasing edited videos for YouTube, where I'm at the mercy of the YouTube machine and the audience's interest. It can take years for people to find my stuff. Janchvik, so from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, yes. I think there is a lot from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons that has kind of been lost. I am more than likely in the future you will see stuff from even 3.5, but a lot of monsters had been recycled from the older printings. There are other books other than this particular book that I showed you, the Monstrous Manual, that I can cover as well. So I'm in it, and I really think you are going to get a completely different animal from this whole thing. I think it'll be much more useful to you. D&D 20, it's super easy to convert the old monsters, Monster Manual, basically into AC and THAC0, adjusting for a better format. I don't think it's terribly difficult to do the conversion, but you don't need to worry about it. Most of the older monsters have already been converted in some way, somewhere. Do you plan on doing anything from Spelljammer or Dragonlance? Well, Todd, I just asked that question. Did people want me to do monsters on Gothic Horror or on Spelljammer? I'm happy to do either one. I have no intentions to do anything with Dragonlance because I don't really feel like there's that much in Dragonlance to actually deal with. Janjvik, you did some Curse of Strahd videos, so it makes sense in some way. It does make sense in a lot of ways for me. I mean, in some way, I guess, but for me, I guess I want to allow you to take, because the Curse of Strahd has got a lot of stuff there already. It's very dense, right? It's already done most of the work. So it makes much more sense to give you more toys to play with to make it even more interesting. The platform is called Lighthall. So for those of you, I will put the link up if you like. And so I have said this before, but hang on, just give me a second. And I'll just put Lighthall in here and put the link in, and then I'll talk about my grand plan that I have been trying to do for years. I tried to do it on YouTube and it just didn't work. It hasn't worked, and it probably never will work because it's the wrong platform to do it on. So let me just find this for you, and I'll put it in here. And I will talk, a little bit about the kind of courses that are going to be offered here. Right, so here's the link. And it all spells back to monsters. Somebody said I could see somebody mention something about monster tactics, and I can assure you we're going in that direction as well. Right, so drink of water and then I'll just explain. So this course for the Lost Mine of Phandelver is the first of many that will be eventually released on Lighthall. Okay. Janjvik, did you... Oh, I see what you did. Monster videos, specifically about their tactics. Yes, I have in the past, a long time ago, I did monster tactic videos, and I did that specifically. I picked monsters that were in the Lost Mine of Phandelver. This is one of the things I'm going to do on Lighthall, is I'm going to do maps, miniatures, dice, presentations, and show you how to use a lot of the monsters that you find in the 5e monster manual. Like, I will show you how to run them so they are more efficient and they do what they need to do. So you've got a better understanding of how useful they can be, or how they don't really work. Sometimes monsters have a specific focus to them. They're not necessarily a combat machine and need to operate a particular way. And I will explain and show you how to do that. Not only will I explain to Dungeon Masters how to run these monsters, I will also explain how to defeat them, what their weaknesses are, and how they can be exploited. So it would be useful to a player, but it will also be useful to a Dungeon Master so they can educate their players over time about how to deal with them. It's all those monster combat tactics classes will rotate too, so they won't necessarily be the same monsters. It would be 8 weeks, and then we cycle out into different monsters, and I might keep 1 or 2 of the original monsters from the first rotation. So that's coming. Let me go here. This is why I wanted to talk about monster lore on YouTube a lot more, okay? Because like I said, it all goes together in some way. Morgan, at the moment I am insane. Another to flesh out D&D character of mine, a changeling, 5-person. Okay, all right, yep. Okay, so here's the thing. So Morgan, as a GM, I plan out kobolds in an abandoned mine. Holy, they can be so scary. Yes, they can. So I will explain. I'll do kobolds. Okay, that will be on the menu. So one of the things that I've been aware of is that a lot of you who are dungeon masters or game masters have to prepare material. And there's a lot of people who are very new to this whole process, a lot of people who are very experienced. So I decided to build a program that would be useful to beginner dungeon masters and for experienced dungeon masters. And because the classes are recorded on Lighthall and stay there for 3 weeks, you can go back and watch them. So if I do not have time to upload them to YouTube, or it would be inappropriate because there are people in the live feed that have not signed off to be put on YouTube, then, I mean, of course, you wouldn't see it on YouTube. But there's a great risk if I wind up doing everything that I will never have time to put it onto YouTube. That's just a reality. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to build a class for you where you could sit down once a week with me and other people, and we could do all of the Dungeon Master prep that you would often do. It would be between 1.5 hours to 2 hours long. If you can't stay for the whole thing, it wouldn't matter. It would be on Lighthall. This is why I've been asking these questions on the surveys. And the idea behind it is that I explain and show you how to build an adventure quickly on a single A4 page. Now, for some of you that won't be suitable, you'll want to do more, and that's fine. But we've got to figure out how to get people there quicker, right? So how to build an adventure and the different parts that you might need to it. So that's one class. Another one is how to scratch build a monster in Dungeons & Dragons 5e from the ground up. And the first monster I have selected that I will do once this class comes out, it's not ready yet, will be the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters. And also I will do eventually the Rancor from Star Wars, because I love the Rancor and I've included it into my Dungeons & Dragons games. So it means that you can build your own monsters, and I will show you how to do that, okay, so you don't get confused. And we might even be able to cover modifying monsters as well. I will go through building and making magic items, okay? Not necessarily magic weapons and armor, but magic items. Because a lot of people get concerned about making magic items, homebrewing them, and them being too powerful. So we'll deal with that as well, right? How to make your own non-player characters. How to build them quickly and easily. I do a lot of this stuff already. So if a few of you haven't figured out my sense of humor, you will as soon as you wind up in a classroom with me. So non-player characters are a big thing. They're a huge factor of the game. So I will explain and show people how to do that, and we will build some non-player characters. Every time we do this, there's always a explanation, demonstration, and practice part. So you will do this along with me. This is quite deliberate on my part. This is why I'm doing this. Locations. How to develop your own locations. Okay? Explain, demonstrate, and we'll build them together. And then you can, of course, go and take them off and adjust them if you want to. How to improvise. I will go through and explain different strategies for learning how to improvise in a game. So there's a few exercises we can do. We're going to do that as well. And the last one, well, it's not necessarily the last one. And then I'm going to go through skill challenges. Not the 4E skill challenge. I'm talking about the upgraded skill challenge. I will explain how to build them. I'll demonstrate, and we will make a skill challenge. And then the last class would be number 8, will be student's choice. You pick what we do, okay? And that will cycle through. And every time we cycle through, we do a different monster, different magic items, different locations, different NPCs. The idea being is that it can be used by beginner dungeon masters and experienced dungeon masters as a resource. And it would be free. Yep. Another class that is in development, but probably a long way off, is the basic core rules for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. So explain, demonstrate, practice, and then we'll do that for combat, and then we'll do for magic. So it'll be about 3 classes, and then we should have covered everything we need to cover. And then the last one I expect will be the least favorite, and that will be character creation, using pen and paper or a fillable PDF, or using D&D Beyond, because some people use D&D Beyond and say some people don't. So it would be 2 classes, and it would cover one or the other. And you just show up for whichever one you need. So this is why Lighthall is the thing. Now, the reason being is that Lighthall actually pays me to run these classes. They came to me to do that. And so it has always been my desire to give you an experience where you had a Dungeons and Dragons or an RPG sort of classroom. And you may have noticed from a lot of my videos, that's where my head is at. And so this is why I'm going in this direction, okay? Now, okay, so I'm going to end the poll on the broken one, and I'm going to just end this poll. I'm going to start a new poll with the last little bit of time that I have before I have to go and get ready for a Dungeon Master Roundtable. Since apparently I can run more than one poll, which I think is a good idea. What types of monsters would you like me to talk about? Now, did I put it in here correctly? So I am going to post another poll. And what types of monsters would you like me to talk about? I think I got it right. So the first one is Gothic, Horror, and then the next one is Spelljammer. And somebody mentioned something about Dragonlance. So, Dragonlance. Don't know why I didn't think about doing this before, but this is the time to do it. I know there's only a few of you in here, but that's fine. We'll get a bit of a vote and a little bit of a discussion going on. Dragonlance, and then the next one would be just Iconic. Iconic. Why can't I get it right? Oh man, I'm having a moment. Iconic. There's too many eyes. How did I get there? All those eyes in there. Iconic monsters. Okay, so we'll post this, and then I'll give you an opportunity to vote. I already had 2 people mention that they really wanted to stick with the Gothic stuff, which is fine. Yeah, there we go. Absolutely feel free. If you want to affect the future of what I discuss, this is the time. So one of the things about now there's Mongrel Men in this book as well. So that means that I could talk about Mongrel Men if I wanted to. Now AJ Pickett's already done a pretty good video on Mongrel Men. So I'm very reluctant to talk about Mongrel Men because he has covered that topic before. But, and there's quite a lot of information on Mongrel Men as a general rule. I find that it's not like it's hard to find that sort of stuff. Yeah, so they were called Mongrel Men rather than Mongrel Folk in the past. And one of the things about these creatures is that they have the potential to. I mean, it's one of the saddest parts of the story in The Curse of Strahd is when they talk about what happened to the people in the Abbey. Okay, and so therefore, I find that talking about mongrel men or mongrel folk, however we want to voice it, is probably one of my favourite parts of the adventure, because it put the players in a moral dilemma. Like, how do I communicate to people in such a way that you're not dealing with monsters that you just want to kill? The reason for what has happened to them has been so sad. And the Broken One is an example of a tragic monster. I mean, the story of Frankenstein is the tragic creature that's been created, and it's frankly it's like the best thing you can include into an adventure when the monster is not necessarily, it's not clear cut that what you should do is stick your sword in it or blast it with magic. Janchevik, yeah, they should be different than AJ Pickett does. This is my feeling too. I mean, I can't always do that because there will be a point where AJ's got a bit of a head start on me, and so has DungeonDad. But for a while, I can certainly do that. Until, the only way to sort of venture out is to start looking at Spelljammer and Dark Sun. What else? What other monsters and creatures? Dark Sun and some of the other settings that are a little less used. Does that make sense? Okay, so right now there's a gothic theme going on here. It's a little bit of Spelljammer and a little bit of Iconic. So we'll let people keep voting while we discuss this. There is another monster which is called the Argos. Now, I believe Wally, no, not Wally. AJ's already talked about the Argos. It's essentially I would say it's like a gibbering mouther that is traveling space and time. It's basically traveling around. You like Mr. Rex's do his stuff his own way. Yeah. I mean, look, Eberron, I suppose that's true. I mean, I suppose you could head in that direction as well. Samuel, what do you got here, Samuel von Brewster? Spelljammer is completely new to me. I'm so unfamiliar with it. I'm excited to learn more about it. Now, one of the things you'll discover is there's not actually a huge number of different monsters for the Spelljammer setting. They are extremely peculiar and strange. But yeah, I mean, essentially, if you could take anything and just make it sentient, you're probably going in the right direction. Now, Brian does make a good point. Brian has just mentioned Planescape. Planescape is sort of, in some ways, kind of, I think it's darker. I think you'll find that Planescape monsters and creatures are certainly much darker than the things you would get from Spelljammer. Spelljammer often is a mixture of peculiar, strange, weird, alien, funny, and then dark and horrible. There's some very dark and horrible things as well. Planescape and Dark Sun, yeah, that's certainly, look, I'm not against doing those sorts of things. I don't think DungeonDad and AJ have used these. So one of the reasons why I have kind of pursued the gothic horror monsters is because I know AJ is very reluctant to talk about anything Ravenloft, because a lot of the people in the Ravenloft community at times have been just a little bit opinionated, or maybe way too opinionated and a bit aggressive, and so he's stayed away from that. I totally understand. So when it comes to the setting, discussing the setting, it's an issue, and I totally get it because I have found something similar. But specifically talking about monsters, when you can transpose them into your own homebrew, you can put them somewhere else. So it's a very different kettle of fish. Does that make sense? I actually think there's a lot to be said for that. Okay. Now there's another monster which I kind of have alluded to called the Eye-Wing. The Eye-Wing is a peculiar monster. It's kind of like a cross between a bat and a beholder. Now, to give you an idea, this is a very old monster. It's not necessarily something that... So this would be a good example of Spelljammer craziness. Like, these are the sorts of things you often see in a Spelljammer campaign, this sort of thing here, right? But the Eye-Wing, and the reason I like the Eye-Wing is it does a lot of very peculiar and odd things. Now, this is the Eye-Wing here. So imagine you have a beholder, but it has got wings, and it flies, and it looks a little bit like a bat, and this is the creature here. I'm very, very interested in doing something like that. Now, the reason being is I feel like it is the perfect time to include it into a domain of dread adventure or a Ravenloft or Curse of Strahd, because you use a lot of bats in that kind of dark gothic horror setting, right? And they are from the abyss, so they are very evil in nature. They are going to cause a lot of problems for you. But I think this is also a very interesting monster that might be of use to you as well. And that's why it's on my wish list to talk about in the future. There's another one. Now, did anybody remember The Rock? He did a movie called The Scorpion King. And he gets transformed into this horrible sort of scorpion, humanoid, centaur-like creature. And actually, there's a monster from older versions of the game that actually is very much like that. Now, I've kind of alluded to talking about this in the past, and I kind of think there's a time to do this. This is another one where I feel like you might find it really useful for some of your campaigns where you want to just get absolutely bat crazy. So this is an actual monster from older versions of the game, the Man Scorpion. Now, I think the Man Scorpion has a lot of potential because, I mean, let's get real. Who didn't want to sort of take The Rock and his... I mean, the movie was not... I mean, the special effects for him weren't great, but the idea and concept behind it was pretty impressive. So this is another creature which I am very interested in discussing in the future. I don't believe anybody has actually talked about the Man Scorpion. Then AJ Pickett may have discussed it. I do not remember. Yeah, the Scorpion King. But it's called the Man Scorpion, which, frankly, again, like I said, older versions of the game often referred to a lot of creatures as being man or men rather than women, for whatever reason. Does that make sense? Yep. Hi. Yeah, that's right, Samuel. Absolutely. You got it. You got it. Okay. Right. Well, I think we've covered what we needed to for today. What is happening next week? So next week I'm going to be discussing a player guide. Now, you will still find it useful as a dungeon master. Okay. So next week I'm doing a player guide on vehicles in Dungeons and Dragons 5e. I'm going to be talking about vehicles that travel from just across a world, whether that be the sea, in the air, along the land. I'm going to kind of pull that apart and make it a discussion that I think your players will find useful, so they understand some of the tribulations and issues you as a dungeon master have to deal with and that they need to consider when using vehicles in a Dungeons and Dragons game. Because vehicles, it's actually quite important to be able to travel in a vehicle at a certain point. We can't just have them sit on a horse or a camel or even an elephant or a mule from level 1 right through to level 20. That's absolutely ridiculous. Now, if you want to do that and that's your campaign, that's fine. But for me, it's not where my head is at. Okay, so I'm going to talk about sort of the use of vehicles and the kinds of vehicles that players might want to be using, and I'll explain to them some of the things they need to consider to make your life as a dungeon master easy. So vehicles is big on the list, but we also need to talk about vehicles, and I've kind of talked about this in the past. I want to talk in terms of a player guide and vehicles at higher levels. When we get to level 10 and level 15, things change because we're not just traveling from point A to point B across the world of Faerun. We are traveling at some point, since the Spelljam is now here, we're now traveling to different worlds, from one world to another. So we need to talk about Spelljammer ships, flying ships, portals, transportation rings, that sort of stuff, and time machines. The big one, the one that scares everybody, is time machines. So my intention is to take this and dissect it and present it to you, to players, so that they understand what you need as a dungeon master when dealing with vehicles, from right through across all of the levels, right up to level 20. Okay, when we're dealing with high-end play, not just low-end play, right across the whole thing. And then I'm hoping that once I've done that, it will be useful to you as dungeon masters to take that and then point the players in the direction of it. Now, you can clip my videos, by the way. I haven't turned off the clipping feature. So if you find that my video is too long because it's a live stream and the players won't watch an hour-long live stream, then clip it. If I don't clip it, then you can clip it. Okay? Just don't try to monetize it. It's probably the worst thing you could do. But you can, because I don't write on line off on that. But if you want to just upload it to your channel as a clip to show to your players, you can. Okay? Or just listen to. So vehicles are definitely there. The apparatus of Kowalch. Yes, it is a vehicle. It is. And it's not a very good vehicle. I know a lot of people talk about it a lot, but it's a very poor vehicle, frankly. So yeah. Well, look, I can talk about that particular vehicle, but it isn't a great vehicle. Compared to some of the things that I've used in my games, it's not a great vehicle. I hate to say it, it just isn't. No, I don't. I don't hate to say it. It's just frankly, it's not a great vehicle. One of the things that I also wanted to do is every fortnight I'll do another player guide, and I will pull apart all of the stuff that you dungeon masters have been trying to do in your games or have been afraid to do. Hi, Ramiro. I hope I got your name right. Right now I'm losing my voice. I know I need to stop, but I'm going to talk about this stuff. Okay, so those of you who are actually here, you'll know what's going on. So what am I doing? So next week, we're going to deal with vehicles. I don't know if every fortnight I'll do another player guide, and we're going to talk about magic items, legendary magic items, not just any magic item, like legendary magic items, like how do you deal with this? And it'll be a guide for players. And it won't be like anything you've seen on YouTube that other YouTubers have made. It'll have a very different sort of focus, okay? Then at some point we're going to talk about talking with deities and gods, because player characters at some point have got to do this, right? It happens. We're going to cover the likes of castles and strongholds. We're going to talk about things like businesses, because running a business in Dungeons & Dragons 5e out of the DM guide sucks. It's awful, okay? I've got something in mind for that as well. I've got something for guilds that I think you will all find really useful. And then I'm definitely going to discuss at some point, I'm going to pull apart the concepts of making the game your own. And there will be more stuff like this coming, okay? Samuel, what do you got here, Samuel? Could a Spelljammer ship be made of stone? Why not? Are there limitations on what a ship can be composed of? So just recently, AJ Pickett did a 5e stat block for a Spelljammer ship. He did a conversion. If you look on his community tab, you'll find it, and you can download it. It won't cost you anything. He's just released it recently. Yeah, look, Spelljammer ship. I'm sure somebody's going to say there are limitations to what you can do with a Spelljammer ship, but you're dealing with Spelljammer. There, you can have like a sentient carnivorous giant donut if you wanted. Okay, the sorts of things in Spelljammer are bat crazy. You could essentially have a Borg cube floating around in the astral sea if you really wanted to. So the sky's the limit. All right, so I think we have pretty much, okay, so we've got the votes in, and it looks to me that people are quite happy with gothic horror monsters. So we will stick with gothic horror monsters for now, okay? Some of them will be useful in Spelljammer, some of them will be useful in other games, but I think gothic horror is where we're at for now, okay? All right, well, thank you for that. I'm glad for the feedback. I appreciate that. Good. All right, so we'll pump that in there, and I better get myself organised. I've got an hour to get myself organised and prepped and ready, so I should tootle off. Thank you everybody for coming and watching my live stream. I know this is a little bit of a shock to the system. Suddenly I'm talking about monster lore rather than some of the other things I've talked about in the past. But frankly, I think you will find you're going to get everything that you kind of expected on my channel anyway, through the classes that I run, just on a different platform and in a different format. And frankly, in a format that, I mean, I can pull somebody into the stream on the classes. I can't do that on YouTube. It's impossible. Not to mention there's no lag on Lighthall and no ads. Anyway, thank you for watching my stuff, and I do appreciate it. And thank you to my patrons. Please, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. Okay? And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.